Hey, it's Bill Gross, the LAProbateExpert.com, and I interview industry experts all the time. I'm a real estate broker in Los Angeles, California, and really selling houses all over California and actually building a national team. And so part of our efforts are to help buyers find great resources, great lenders is part of that, and my team members to find great colleagues and supporters and vendors, and mortgage lenders are part of that. And so along the way, a very good friend of mine referred me to Giancarlo Anduray. And I want to just spend some time. We talked previously a few times and talked about doing some business together, but I thought I would introduce you to him here. So Giancarlo, say hello.
Hey, how are you guys? Pleasure to meet you. I'm excited to be here. A little bit nervous, but we're good.
Good. Nervous means you're alive. You're paying attention. So tell me a little bit about where'd you grow up, and then how'd you get in the mortgage business?
Oh my gosh. So let me simplify this. So I was actually born and raised in Honduras, right? So came to this beautiful country when I was 15, and since then, just work. So I lived in California. I lived in San Fernando Valley for a very long time. Then moved to Florida, then went back to California and lived in Santa Clarita Valley for a while there, and then moved here to Phoenix. So I got into the mortgage industry because I honestly really wanted to get some more flexible time with family. Really, that was the goal, right? I wanted to get into an industry, that can be profitable and still allow me to create that, work-life balance, that I couldn't have where I was at. Working an 8 to 5 was just, very, very difficult for our family dynamic. So had to look for something different, and haven't looked back since.
Nice. Well, we're similar. I started in California. I lived in Florida, moved back to California, though I haven't gone to Arizona yet. We'll see what happens there. And then, so you say family. I see you have a ring on. Married, kids. Give us a little personal background.
I do actually. So I'm absolutely big man of faith. Been happily married now since 2009. Okay.
Wow.
So been a beautiful journey, right? A lot of ups and downs, and
sure.
Just part of that with marriage. I got 4 kids. Oldest one. Yeah.
You guys are busy.
Yeah. Oldest one is married. She just literally purchased her first house, just closed on it a couple of days ago. And the next one is in the military right now. He's in Virginia. And then I got 2 little ones. I got a 10 and an 8-year-old. So my conversations with with my kids, go from like, hey, I need financial advice, to my son saying, hey, I'm working on my car now. And then my little kids, saying, hey, I want a video game. And
wow.
So the range is completely. Yes. Yeah. And
good for you.
For fun, I coach club level soccer. So go figures.
Wow. Very nice. Okay, good. So you're busy. So let's talk about business. As a mortgage originator, what's your focus in your business? What's your basic goal, your basic activity on a daily basis?
So basic goal and activity on a daily basis really is just providing mortgage advice, right? Creating strategies for people, right? To help them achieve those goals. So we have I have a model that says, even if somebody doesn't qualify right now, it's not a no, it's a let me show you how. So that's really where I spend most of my day, just having appointments with people and clients and helping them build a strategy. Some of them, super amazing. Some of them a lot more complex. It just depends on their goals, right, and where they want to go.
We didn't talk about this, but I started the business in the mortgage business myself for about 15 years. And one of my mentors was one of the greatest mortgage originators in our industry, Greg Frost. And he had a process where, like you said, it's not about no, but it's not yet. And he had a thing called don't give up. And everybody came to his office, either got a pre-approval letter or got a don't give up. And the don't give up would tell them exactly what they had to do in order to qualify, whether it be raise some income or save some extra down payment or pay off some credit cards or do some administrative work or whatever. And he said people come back to him 5 years later with those sheets. He said every other lender just said no or moved on or stopped. He said, but you gave me a plan, and you stayed in touch with me and encouraged me. And here I am 5 years later, I'm ready to buy a house. And he said, that's what made his business worthwhile, because those people were like, crying that they had worked so hard to get there. Some people are born with money. Some people are born with, skills, but when you have to work out like that, you really appreciate the people who encourage you along the way. So good for you for taking on that attitude.
Yeah, thanks.
What do you see as the biggest challenge for home buyers today in the market? Obviously, prices are going up, rates are going up, inventory is limited. It seems like, if you watch the news, there's The only thing more dramatic than politics is the housing market. What do you see as a challenge for real estate for first-time home buyers to get in this market today?
First challenge or biggest challenge that I really see as a first-time home buyer coming in is the preparation. Really, the expectation of what they're about to go through is by far the biggest challenge, right? I very often talk to people about how the process of owning your dream home comes into place, and I think that the biggest challenge right now, really, for first-time home buyers is the expectation of what they're getting into. A lot of them go into saying, "Hey, I want to buy the dream home," right? And it's no longer the case. You can't really go into a market that is priced this high and say, "Hey, I'm going to achieve that immediately," right? So it's got to be a progressive work. So by far, because once you readjust those expectations and that strategy, it's a lot easier for you to get into the market. And then we talk about move up buyers, right? When do we need to execute? What is that exit strategy, and how do we move forward?
How much of your work is with buyers directly, and how much of your work is with real estate agents that are representing them?
It really depends as to what level, right? I do work a lot, with the clients up front, right? On helping them prepare for that. With real estate agents, with strategic partners, I really do sit down, and help them, kind of be able to develop those conversations, because they can be hard, right? They can be very difficult to have with somebody and say, "Hey, I know this is what you're expecting in, but the market is really not here where it is." I do very often have agents that call me and said, "Hey, you know what? This is the only thing that they're offered, that they're accepting on this house, right? How do we negotiate that?"
Right.
And I help them, look from the lending's perspective, right? This is what can potentially happen when you negotiate this XYZ, right? Appraisal or whatever. So it's really split 75-25, right? But it also depends on the expertise of the agent, right? If they require a little bit extra time, my wife actually is part of my team too as well. So she helps agents, on developing strategies and marketing, and just focus on their ideal client as well.
Right. Yeah. I'm a primarily listing agent, and I have team members who are buyer's agents, and I tell them all the time that I'd much rather have a great loan officer with a loan than a cash buyer, because so many cash buyers turn out not to be cash, but it
Yeah.
requires a loan officer to explain that and to sell that to me and to be responsible to get the loan done. If they're not, then I can't take on that responsibility for my client. So
Mhm.
what do you see as the biggest mistakes that home buyers are making in this market? It's been a great opportunity. Those who bought, everybody bought a year ago, 2 years ago, made a lot of money, maybe more money in their house than they did in their job or business. But what do you see the mistake of people who are shopping for homes today?
Okay, there's two. Okay. Number one is not having an exit strategy. So
Mhm.
very often we talk about coming into the market, right, and buying a house.
Right.
Even less than that, we talk about an exit strategy. When should we execute the next move, right? And the second one is budgeting.
Mm,
Okay, we have a very big issue with financial literacy in our country, right?
absolutely.
And by far, the number one issue with us is really budgeting. We don't know how to put a budget together. We don't know how to execute, and how to not to go over our head. And I really do see that is one of the biggest things that I have, right? I mean, I've told clients, hey, you have to pull back. I know that this is what you want, right? And as a loan
Right.
officer, I mean, like we get paid on the loan amounts, right? So the higher you
Right.
go, the better it is for me. And I'm like, no. This is not about me. This is about you and your family. Go out, discuss it with your husband or your partner, whoever, right? Whoever you're purchasing the house with, budget first, make sure that you guys can afford what you guys are getting into. So those are the two
Well,
biggest things.
and probably means make some changes in your life. I think the biggest challenge people make is, you can't have everything.
Correct.
Typically, maybe there's a few people that can, but in general, people, have to put off things they want for a while until they can afford them. And I have this discussion all the time. I had a good friend of mine who, when, was complaining about how tough it was in his budget. And he had just bought a brand new, beautiful Ford F-250 truck. It was gorgeous. And I said to him, I'd like to drive a truck like that. I make a lot more than you, have a lot more money in the bank than you do. I'm not independently wealthy. I'm kind of knocking on that door. I live in a neighborhood where there's no place to park, so I couldn't probably drive that truck. That's my fantasy car, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I said, I don't have a car payment. My budget doesn't allow for it. And he goes, well, I got a great deal. It's only like $500 a month. I said, well, okay, number one, that's $500 a month I don't spend. I make more than you. Number two, your license is higher. Your state California registration. Three, your car insurance is higher.
Yeah.
And so you make these decisions and it's only $500 a month versus what?
Oh,
Versus 750. And meanwhile, it just, now you're not going to buy a house. I mean, that decision,
absolutely.
you're not buying a house without truck for most people. And the people who buy houses get buy used, get by without, make it last a little longer, put the money away, get it in the house. And then over time, they can afford to buy those things later.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree totally, right? That's why budgeting is just such a big deal. You know, I have people that, you know, make a very good living and still can't even qualify for $250,000 loan. I mean,
Amazing.
and it's, again, you know, having those tough discussions, you know, because I mean, my heart goes out, you know, to them, right? Because it, you know, those are mistakes and those are things, you know, that we're never taught on, right? You know,
Right.
and we make those mistakes, you know, so my heart just goes out to them, you know, but at the same time, I need to be able to be strong and just be upfront with them, tell them, look, you're going to have to cut down your spending, right? You know,
Right.
and there's going to be things that you think you need that you're probably going to have to cut off, right? And um, especially with vehicles, you know, I've seen people right now that are scared of having a $2,500 a month mortgage payment, but they have a $900 more car payment, and
Yeah,
it's
I don't get
like,
that at all.
I'm like, guys, and I did tell them, I'm like, look, I'd be, you know, and I ask them, you know, hey, can I be candid with you, right? Because I'm gonna talk to them as a friend, and I'm like, you have two choices: either you live in your car, or you live in a house. Take your pick, because rents are
Right.
going to be higher. You know, and Arizona is pretty unique because we don't really have a ton of laws, you know, that restrict the amount of increase that we can have on properties. I know California, you do. We had 88% rental increase year over year.
Wow.
It's not stopping, right?
Wow.
And
Wow.
had another discussion too as well, and this is part of, like, depending on the market that your agents are into as well, right, has to play a big role. You need to understand your demographics. But Arizona went from a place, you know, that was you know, very, very blue collar, right? You know, so income levels, you know, 12, 13, 14, $15 an hour, right, were great, right? You could afford rent, you know, you could afford living, cost of living was great. Well,
Right.
last 2 years have gone up dramatically, but then you've also introduced a lot of these jobs that are now paying 20, 25, $30 an hour, right? You know, so you have a household now that makes 100, 120, 130,000 that can actually afford a $500,000 house,
Right.
because of tax rates and a couple of other things here in Arizona. So people get, you know, panic. They're like, oh, how are people going to live? Well, they're going to live because they adjusted the type of income that they're receiving. So
Sure.
it's been a huge, very big change, right? You know, something that agents need to be aware of too as well. Your clientele and the client that you speak to, it's not that you don't want to help them, because I had that same narrative to myself,
Right.
by the way. Um, I would talk to a client, you know, and their income levels wasn't there, or their budgeting wasn't there, and then I took that on as personal, like, oh my God, I don't want to really tell them this. I don't want to make them feel bad. But honestly, like, if you ask for permission, that's number one key, right? You know, can I be candid with you? Is a very big key. Once people say yes, right, then they've opened the door for you not to be able to explain to them and say, look, this is where you currently are. I don't want you to feel bad, but this is what you can do, and that's pretty much key.
Is such you're so right about the lack of education. You know, I'll never forget when I started in the business. I was in the loan business, I mentioned to you, and it was a Sunday. I went to this couple's house. It was in Whittier. I remember the house like it was yesterday. And as I pulled up, it was like in a nice neighborhood. They were the one house with like no land. You know, the grass was burned out, and they're
Mhm.
just toys strewn over the front yard. Like, it was the worst kept house in this really nice neighborhood. And I went in the house, and the inside of the house was the same thing. There was just stuff everywhere. You could feel the tension. And I started filling out the application because they had put an offer to buy a house. And now I'm there to take the loan application with them, meet them in person. And I started going through the credit cards and the debts that
Mhm.
the husband had. Well, he didn't tell the wife what he was borrowing. She didn't tell him what she was borrowing. So in the conversation, that doesn't count what I owe. Okay, let's go through what you owe. And I forget the actual numbers, but the total credit card debt alone was more than their annual income.
Yeah.
And they had never seen each other's numbers. They each had about half. They thought they were the only ones that carried the debt. But you could see the impact on their
Yeah.
lives and their kids because they couldn't afford anything. They had spent the next 5 years at money
Hmm.
because nobody had said to them, "Hey, you have to live in a budget, or else at some point you start, affects your lifestyle." And yet those people who get a control of that are able to move forward. So tell me, what do you see about the difference of people who are able to buy a house, that is able to budget, that is able to plan, that keeps their credit in debt? What do you see? What's the character thing that we need to work on to be that person, do you think?
Can I be candid with you?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay, number one thing, get off of social media.
Yeah.
That's that's just right there. Get off of social media. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're caught in in a time, right? Where we are looking at people's highlight reels.
Right.
Okay. And unfortunately, that contributes a lot, to us feeling like we are getting left behind.
Wow.
So we go back again into a little of a roller coaster, right? Of like, well, this person is going out on vacation. And by the way, I've had these discussions with my wife. I'm not talking about, just an idea. I'm telling you guys that this is what I go through as well, because we're not immune. Nobody is immune to this, but we do really go on social media and we start looking at all these things, right? And then we're like, this person purchased this and whatnot. One of the things that just literally happened, right? So I was super blessed of being able to purchase another home right now. We moved into this house, right? Because, my mother's now living with us. So it has a casita, right? Where she can live and, just kind of help her out, right? Because again, things are going, growing so much in Phoenix. And, we moved into the house, right? And the first thought of was like, okay, new house, let's buy everything new, right? And that thought did go through our heads. Well, we saw that another one of our friends purchased a new house too as well, right? And they went out and they purchased everything brand new TVs, couches, furniture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, and we started looking at this, right? My wife and I start putting these numbers together and they were exorbitant. I mean, we're talking about $50,000, $60,000, right? That I'm like, do we really want to do this? Do we really need this right now? Right. And where did we find out? In social media. Now, would that thought have gone through our heads at that point? No. Right. So I think the number one step is that. The second step really is, again, understanding what your needs and wants are. Okay. Nobody needs a Mercedes. I'm sorry. Nobody needs a Mercedes. You do not need an F-250, right? Unless you're really working in construction and you really need to pull something like that, then yes. But it's a want and need thing, right?
Right.
So
Well,
yeah.
and again, I tell people, look, if you can afford it means, the car is like 1% of your net worth. So if you
Yep.
want to buy a $100,000 Mercedes, when you have $10 million, great, go buy a brand new Mercedes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Enjoy it. But you can't buy a car that's worth more than your net worth. Or if your net worth is negative, you can't buy a new car. It's not,
absolutely.
that just doesn't work. There's a certain budgeting process that has to go on in people's lives. I'm not against having nice things. I have some very nice things.
Yeah.
I have a few very nice things. A lot of things I don't spend money on because I want to have the nice things, right? Those are choices. So, okay. So that's that. And I think what's interesting, Giancarlo, is, spend some time on this topic because this is the real part of the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's more fun to talk. I see, mortgage officers now, they're all on, I advertise on social media. I should say,
Yeah.
I post to social media a lot of educational material. And so as a result, I also get people who contact me, and I look at business associates, and I see people who like post, they're at this hotel, like this, luxury resort. And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
I mean, I like going to those places. Don't get me wrong, with my family or when it's appropriate, but to make it look like that's my life, it's just not healthy for my clients, let alone for me.
No, absolutely.
So this is really about us helping people. So tell me about what can we do? What do you do, and what can we do better to help people learn? What do you have any particular tools? Do you have any particular books you refer them to, or programs that you refer them to that help get them on track financially?
It really depends on their stage, right? And where they currently are. I've done a number of advisements, from teaching them a specific class, right? Like I've been blessed with being able to teach Financial Peace University by Dave Ramsey too as well.
Oh, wow.
I've done a couple of other, training seminars, and, talk to them about insurances, right? It really depends on the stage of their life, right? And where they currently are at.
Right.
Some of them, need to start, like Dave Ramsey says, baby step number one, right? And then I tell everybody, right, it really depends on your particular situation, right? We cannot have a blanket answer for everything.
Right.
There are some amazing books and everything is there. Now, I will tell you, if you are going to listen to advice, please, please, please listen to me on this. You have to learn it from somebody who has gone through it. Okay.
Yeah.
You cannot get advice, from somebody who read a book and then all of a sudden it's a self-proclaimed, expert. And we have a lot of that in our industries, a lot of that, right? So my number one thing would be go with somebody who, either A, has gone through it, or B, has resources to actually give you that actual advice.
Yeah.
Right. Now, again, going back again into how I advise people really does come into whatever stage they're on, right? Maybe our first step is really to start talking about credit and fixing credit, right? And with that, one hand in hand, right, goes budgeting, right? Like your first
Right.
thing, if you want to fix your credit, yeah, you can send it to a credit repair agency, and we put, we patch a hole in the bucket, right? But eventually, I mean, that's going to be that hole is going to get unplugged, and you're going to go back again to one. So we got to change our habits. There's been other times, where everything else is good and all we got to do is, just save a little bit more money, right? So we talk about that. Other times, we have to talk about, hey, what kind of career are you really in, right? Um, those are kind of be some candid conversations that I have with clients, but it really depends on what stage they are in. I feel like I've been in the industry long enough, to be able to advise somebody very wisely and say, hey, this is the time projected on where we need to be at and where you currently are at. Um, Retirees too as well. There's a lot of people moving into Arizona that just retired, and one of the first questions I get is like, hey, should I pay my house off, right? And it's like, well, I don't know. Let's look at this, right? Do we need to
Right.
have a financial planner involved in this? Because there's a
Right.
different level of advice, there too as well. So identifying those steps is really what a key is, at least in my position, right?
Yeah.
So that's hopefully that answers the question.
I always look for a tool to help people understand. I've over my career given away hundreds of copies of the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, which is just like
Mm-hmm.
a starter mentality that you've got to live on less than you make and invest the difference over time. If you don't get that concept, the rest of life is just very, very difficult. You can't,
Yes.
nothing else is going to work. You have to start with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very complicated, but it's an important principle, right? First principle. And the other one is Dave Ramsey. Some people don't like the style, and he can be a little bit hard-handed and rigid in some regards. But what I will say is, I think he has the best general principles for
Yes.
people to turn around their finances. And once you get to a certain level, and you got through baby steps, whatever it is, 7 or 8, at some point you might say, okay, I want to be more aggressive in my investment. Fine. But you can't do that until you've got rid of your debt, you turn yourself
Right.
around. There's no shortcut to that hard work.
Nope. No shortcut to that hard work.
Yeah, I listen to them all the time. And I have to say, the one thing I'm most proud of is my daughter and son-in-law are on the Dave Ramsey program. They, not because they had to, they just came across it, and they're very focused. They're saving money, investing. And so glad to see them move in that direction. So look, Giancarlo, I sure appreciate the chance we've had to chat today. One last area I guess I would ask is, you must work with different real estate agents, and some are good and some are struggling and some are successful and some are not as much. What's one piece of advice you give a real estate agent to help them with their business?
Two things. Okay. The first one, learn how to make phone calls. Okay. There's an art to it, and it's beautiful. Okay. So remember, when you reach out to somebody, that phone call, even if they don't pick up the phone, it's a reminder. You set reminders on your phone because you very often put it on the back of your head. And a lot of the things that you put in the back of your head are things that you really don't want to have to engage in immediately. So you have to focus on something else, and then you put yourself that reminder. A phone call to somebody can just potentially be that, even if they don't pick up the phone.
Right.
Right. So having a conversation with that, there's plenty of training I've actually done around phone calls, and I absolutely love making phone calls, right? Some of the most beautiful conversations are really happen with that. Text messages and emails are not a replacement for that.
Right.
Okay. So that's number one. Number two, learn when to say no. Okay. I know that we're very hopeful in trying to help out everybody, but at some point we need to understand who we're working with, right? And that allows us to be a professional. Okay. If we want to be a professional in our industry, something that is, call it recession proof, call it, whatever you want, longevity, whatever it is, right? The best agents, the best loan officers have implemented both of those. Learn how to make phone calls, learn when to say no.
Well, if you're effective making phone calls and talk to a lot of people, then you have the freedom to say no. If you don't make any phone calls, you only get one lead. And that's the thing with real estate agents I see all the time. I'll ask about their business. Well, I have 2 good buyers. And I said, well, you understand you need to have about 10 to get one contract, right? If you have 10 buyers who are out looking this weekend, some you're with and some you're not with, one will write a contract in the next 30 days, not all 10. And if you only have one, odds are they're not going to write a contract, but for 10 months, and just 1 in 10 chance they're going to buy a house. And so, that's the challenge of our business is it sounds harsh when I tell them that, because they're like ready to go spend the money. They're buying a new car based on the buyer they have. And
Don't do that.
don't do that. For sure, don't do that. Don't spend the money until it's in your bank account. Well, look, Giancarlo, it's been a pleasure chatting with you today. I appreciate your insights on helping buyers get ready to buy houses and how to be effective in making money. If someone want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So you can go to the website, afm.loans, or you can just reach out to me, on my cell, 623-227-1927. So I do have the pleasure of working with real estate agents nationwide, right? So I am a national lender. So having discussions with people here in Arizona, in California, New York, Florida, Texas, right? They're all different, but very, very similar, right? Because real estate laws can be very different in each one of these, these places, right? But that's how you can get in touch with me, right? So it doesn't matter where you're at or what situation you're in, Spanish or English, right? Because I do speak Spanish too as well. Just reach out to me.
Yo hablo español también.
Okay. Perfecto.
Yo necesito practicar mi español. Okay, so again, afm.loans.
Yes.
Website. Or Giancarlo Anduray is available all over the place, social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, all that.
Yeah, just Google my name and you'll find me. So
only one Giancarlo. I found that out. There's not Giancarlo's, but there's only one Giancarlo Anduray for sure. I looked it up real fast and you popped up all over the place. So I'm Bill Gross, and there's not one but two billionaires who live an hour from my house, who've been on and both been the cover of Fortune magazine. So, but if you go to therealbillgross.com, that's me, just FYI. So anyhow, Giancarlo, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Look forward to working with you in the future. Bill. I believe you're going to come on our home buyer seminar here a couple of times. So look forward to having you as a guest then. Make it a powerful week, and we'll talk to you later, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you. See ya.